Hey everyone, and welcome to the new Black Moth Radio. My name is Robin Bull. I am your host. A lot of you already know who I am, follow several of my websites for those that don't know, and especially until my new intro and outro, of course, get finished. I am a professional writer. I work from home. I have three sons and two dogs. I am the owner of the domain confessionsfromthecouch.com, and I am the owner of getindiereviews.com as well as americangoddesssociety.com. You can find me on Facebook, www.facebook.com/therobinbull. You can find me on Twitter, www.twitter.com/therobinbull. So, some of you may be wondering why I moved over here to Podbean and away from Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio has a lot of great features. They give you a call-in board. You get to upload a lot of different sound files, things of that nature. Do live shows. It was great. If you were a free member, you could only do 30 minutes a day. I was a paying member, which is significantly more expensive. Not unreasonable, of course. But over the last couple of years that I've used them on and off, I have experienced numerous technical difficulties. So I moved over here to Podbean. It's like half the price. You don't get a call-in board, but that's okay because if I wanted to do a live show, there are other websites and small businesses that could handle the calls that are really expensive. So that's why we're moving here. I have unlimited bandwidth, and of course, it's all good. We do have a couple of sponsors for this show. The first one being my friend Rebecca Cummings. She is here in Oklahoma and she is a Tupperware consultant. You can find her on Facebook, Tupperware with Culinary Klutz. It's really, really good stuff. She sent me a fantastic shaker cup because she knew I lost mine when we bought the house and did the move. And I did get to try it. It is fantastic. No spills, no nothing. I'm really, really happy with it. I do plan on doing a Facebook Live about it. This last week has just been insanely busy. And I actually have to open up my email to tell you about the next sponsor. You would think I would be a little more prepared, especially since I'm, recording this from my computer. We have an independent representative from Thrive, Lavelle Thrive, that is sponsoring this podcast today as well. She's also a sponsor of AmericanGoddessSociety.com. And what we do over at AmericanGoddessSociety.com, other than, sort of pagan based since I'm pagan, but it's not just for pagans. The main thing that we do over there is talk about uplifting things and just how to have a better life. We're going to talk a little bit more about that soon. So, if you want to reach Angela because you have any questions about the Thrive system, it is generally a three-step system. They have multiple products past this, but they are products that you can use to sort of enhance your health. The first one is the Thrive Vitamin. They make them for men and women. Then you have your lifestyle mix, and then of course you have your DFT patch. They have several different types of patches. So if you want to find out more, or even how you can start as a Thrive distributor, contact my friend Angela Jockett at angelajockett.com, ANGELAJOCKTT.com. And that will, of course, go up on the website as soon as I have more time to finish what I'm doing as far as the rebranding of the website. So let's go ahead and get started. I actually had a few different things that I wanted to talk about today. My husband, who usually co-hosted with me on Blog Talk Radio, he's actually not here at the moment. We do have a way for him to be able to plug in and be part of the show again, so don't worry if you really enjoyed listening to him. He will certainly be back. The first segment, we're actually going to talk about life, just life in general. And this is especially important if you are someone who had a rough childhood or you were ever in a terrible situation like domestic violence, you've been abused in some way, shape, or form. Not long ago, somebody asked me when I talk or when I write about what happened to me as a child or in a previous marriage, generally what people notice is, I say the abuse. I don't say my abuse. Someone asked me why I did that, and I wanted to come up with, I know why I did it, but I wanted to really stop and think about it and, have a way that I could explain it to everyone so that it would be helpful because this is something that I think is really going to help a lot of people. One thing you have to recognize, especially when you're out of that situation and you want to get better, I don't think very many people want to live a life where they're constantly feeling like a victim because that life sucks. Um, so the thing to keep in mind here is whether it happened during your childhood, whether it was something that happened when you were a teenager, a young adult, or in a marriage, it did not happen because of you. There's nothing, right, that as a child that you did that you should have received that sort of abuse. Frankly, whether it's your parents or just one parent, or whether it was a caretaker, a grandparent, or a spouse or a former spouse, any abuse that you've undergone is not because of you, it is because of them. They would do it regardless of who the other person was. It is not something that is just because of you. And so when you switch from saying my abuse to the abuse, you stop taking ownership for what someone else did to you. And that's really important and it's really empowering because you begin to find a level ground where you can start to rebuild your self worth because it's not your abuse. You did not do that. It is something they did. So it's the abuse and not my abuse. Because again, there's nothing I did as a child. There's nothing I did as an adult that justified anything that happened. So it's not mine, it's theirs. And, they would have done it regardless. My parents would have done it regardless of who their child was. It wasn't just me. And the former spouse did it after me. So it's not me. So keep that in mind and start cognitively referring to things that have happened to you in the past when you're talking about it as the abuse instead of my. Because once you begin to depersonalize it and step away from it just a little, I'm not saying never talk about it again, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying that when you take away that aspect and you place it where it belongs with the person who did it, you're able to better grow as a person and start to get your life back. And that's really, really important. So that brings me to personal responsibility in life in general. I mean, that's a hard area to, of course, decide that you want to go a different direction, and it can take a lot of time, and it can take a lot of practice. But past that, whatever you want out of life, it is totally your responsibility. And I bet you in the last 2 weeks, I've had this conversation with probably a dozen people. It's, well, so and so did this to me, and this happened to me, and that happened to me, and oh, I can't do anything, and oh, I'm stuck, and everyone feels stuck once in a while, and we all have these bad times, and everybody is entitled to a day where they're just, you know, having a rough time. It happens. It happens to everybody. But the only way that you're really going to be able to be happy is when you take personal responsibility for your happiness. It is not your children's job to make you happy. No one can do that. They can't do that for you. They have their own little lives to lead. And, they're eventually going to become adults. And if you constantly put that pressure on them to make you happy, then when you're older, they're probably not going to be around as much. It is not the job of your spouse to make you happy. Happiness is an inside job. That is something that has to come from you. Just like you can't make your spouse happy. You can make them glad that they're with you, but as far as them being happy as a whole, that's something they have to do. Happiness is totally an inside job. And with that being said, no one is happy 100% of the time. Like, everyone wants these happy moments, and we sit around and we think, oh, there's something wrong with me because my life isn't happy all the time. And that's just not true. And the thing is, when you think about it, life can't be happiness all the time because you would become immune to that feeling and it wouldn't be as good. You would again start to it's why some people are never satisfied because they get so used to what they have, they want more, they can't be happy with what they have. And that old saying of, there's someone else who would be happy with even half of what you've got is true. If that's something that you're struggling with, I really recommend the Dalai Lama's book, The Art of Happiness. It's really, really good read. And it's the same thing with business. No one is responsible for your business but you. Your profit is your problem. It's not because don't blame the clients if your business is having problems. If you're not getting clients, or your clients aren't spending what you think they should with you, that's not their fault, that's your fault. There's something wrong with what you're doing. It's in the way you're presenting or not presenting, your services, or even your product. And like, for instance, one of my sponsors, Angela Jockett, one of the ways that she goes about promoting her business, she does a lot of stuff on social media, particularly Facebook. She does a lot of pictures, a lot of, she'll admit when she's having a bad day and then talk about when good things happen. And the reason why that is so important is because it begins to humanize her, and people begin to see, oh, wow, a regular person does this, which means maybe I can do it too. And I have some other friends that are in direct sales that do that, and it's great. And so, again, when you're thinking about your business, whether or not you're successful, whether or not you're even able to start a business, it's all about personal responsibility. And that's something that I harp on a lot, because I can't tell you how many times, even just during, say, the last 4 years, that people have come to me, oh, will you help me start a business where I can work from home too? Or can I work with you? Things of that nature, even before I became a writer, because I've had other small businesses that did fine. It's just that, writing ended up being a whole lot better. But when people start to realize that running a business is work, especially when they have a job and they have a family, it's a lot of work. And then, you add all those other responsibilities on top of it. It can be difficult and tiring to build a business. And, then you sit there and you think about, okay, well, I work 8 hours a day, and now, I've got to go home and do the dishes, and the dog puked on the carpet, and my kid has sports practice, and just on and on and on, and it gets tiring. And so then all you want to do is, like, freaking sit on the couch and do nothing. And, even if you don't have that many responsibilities, the first thing people do is they jump online and start playing on Facebook, start playing on Twitter, numerous selfies to Instagram. And those aren't bad tools, they're not bad websites. But the thing is, you can't sit here and say that you don't have time to build a business when you're not looking at what you're doing with your spare time. What you're doing in your spare time is just as important to your future goals, particularly if you're trying to get out of the rat race. And it doesn't really matter what sort of business you want to start. If you want to make something a priority, you'll make it a priority. So if Facebook is your priority, that's your priority. But you can't blame anybody else. And matter of fact, if you're wanting to build a business, or if, running a business has always been a dream of yours in any way, shape, or form, I encourage you, for the next week, pay attention to how much time you spend on social media. Don't change anything. Don't try to not get on there. Just pay attention and time it down to the minute, because you will be crazy surprised at how much time you're actually spending on social media. And again, that is time that you could spend toward building a business, or anything productive, really. You could spend that time with a hobby, or, doing something else. Like I said, though, social media, great tools. They're also good time wasters. I'm not saying that no one should get on there. What I am saying is, though, don't say, I don't have any time, when that's what you're doing with all of your time. So, the next thing I was going to bring up, last week, my 16-year-old son had his cousin and one of their mutual friends over, because we were going to go to the lake, and we did. But that night, the night before we left, we all went to bed. And by the way, let me tell you, it is so expensive. You got an 18-year-old, and a boy, 18-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy, no, three 16-year-old boys, three of which, three out of those four are like 6'2" and up, right? And then my little 7-year-old, who's almost as tall as I am. That's really not saying much, but you know. And then of course my husband was eventually here as well. You don't want to know what I ended up spending not just on pizza for that night, but what I ended up having to spend like for sandwich stuff for the trip. It's crazy, so crazy. So if you think your dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, you're right. But that actually, that was actually probably why I had the dream that I had. I'm not gonna lie. um, so that night, went to bed. I had this dream that I took everyone that was in the house that night. So my three sons, my nephew, my son's friend, and of course my husband. We went to Disney World in my dream. Okay, I've been to Universal. I've been to a few places. So in my dream, we're there and we're sitting in this restaurant and we're waiting on our food. I just remember it's an all you can eat. Like, I don't remember what sort of food or anything. I just know we're waiting with a bunch of other people for dinner. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this younger woman and this guy, he's about the same age she was. If I had to put an age, I would say maybe, 22, 23. They're leaving and she's pretty much like dragging him by the hand, and she said something to the effect of, well, money isn't everything, so we'll just go somewhere else and we'll just live a quiet life. And in my dream, I looked at my husband and I said, she's right. Money isn't everything, but you got to have it to pay the bills. And that's really important um, with business and in life. It's true, we shouldn't get totally wrapped up in money because money does not buy happiness. Again, like I said earlier, you could have all of these great things, and if great things happen to you all the time, eventually you'd get tired of it. You'd want something else, something else, something else. And I'm certainly not saying all rich people do that. And I buy into Dave Ramsey's philosophy. There's, for the most part, nothing wrong. If you earned your money ethically, I don't have a problem with it. But, when it comes to your life, you have to take control. Personal responsibility again. You have to take control over your life, and that includes the money that you're able to bring in and take care of your family with. So, I thought that was really important because, money isn't necessarily about fancy vacations, but, it's to pay the light bill. So if you're a freelancer, self-employed in any way, shape, or form, I just happen to end up, knowing and working with a lot of freelancers. Money isn't everything, but it's important. That's how you pay your electricity. That's how you keep food on the table. And so I certainly understand the draw of needing to do some jobs at a price, either jobs you don't care for. I've done tons of those. I still take them from time to time. Or something that doesn't pay quite as well as you would like. And you do that because, of course, you're trying to build a reputation. So I certainly understand that. Just to make sure that what you're taking isn't going to steal your time away from something that could potentially pay you better. And I am not saying that that is an excuse to turn down every single job because you're waiting for some big ticket item. Because at that point, you're just asking for something bad to happen. So it's important to keep your schedule full enough that you're able to pay your bills and take care of your family. And of course, money is not everything. There are a lot of people out there that push the work, 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 work mentality. And my theory is if you're happy working and your family is okay with it, fine, whatever. You're good. You're golden. There was a time where probably I would say 2.5 or 3 years ago, I worked a lot. actually last year I probably worked even more, but that was more of a demand thing. But um, and the reason why I worked was because it actually made me feel better. But what you have to watch out for is when your work begins to define your self worth, you're running into an issue because when you're no longer able to work, you're going to start worrying, of course, that nobody's going to want anything to do with you. So you have to be able to pull back from that work. You have to be able, not even just for yourself, although taking care of you is really important, but also for your family. So no, money isn't everything. And in fact, you do have to make sure that money isn't the only way that you're able to define your self-worth. Um, it can be a real balancing act, and I think that is actually the crux of work-life balance. It's not necessarily everything has to be perfect all the time and everyone's happy, because that's just not the reality that we live in. Instead, it's about making sure that your self-worth is properly defined as a whole person. Someone who loves doing this, loves doing that. You and your kids go do this, you go do that. You spend time with your spouse if you have one, or your significant other, whatever. Self worth should define all of you as a person. It should not just be limited to one thing. And that's really important because a lot of people struggle with their self worth. And a lot of people also struggle with self care. And a lot of us will just run ourselves into the ground. And there is a saying out there that, burning the candle at both ends, and there's people that say, you can't burn out because you're not a candle. And some people do last longer than others, but that is primarily one of two reasons. Either because they're not being honest with those around them and telling people they're tired and need a break, or they're taking those breaks, which is important, and they just don't let people know. And they don't have to let anybody know. It's their life. It's fine. But when it comes to being in business for yourself, especially if you're a parent who works from home, you have to take care of yourself. There's the old saying, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. So you have to make sure that you're doing things that reinvigorates you and things that you enjoy. I have a ridiculous amount of hobbies. It's it's not even funny. It doesn't mean I sit around and that's all I do every day, but I do make sure that I make time to do these things, including the podcast, because it helps reinvigorate me. It helps me, and that's something actually that we noticed, because last year I was working a crazy amount of hours. Usually around the holidays, my business slows down. I generally work with law firms, lawyers, other professionals, and toward the end of the year, there's a little bit of a lull as far as content writing and things like that with businesses, because they're doing all of their end of year stuff. And my business picks back up, after the first of the year. And but I worked every chance I got. I worked, and it was good. We were able to get some things done that we needed to get done. But oh my God, I was tired. I was so tired all the time. I couldn't, I didn't look forward to anything. I wasn't necessarily depressed. I was just tired, so tired. It was bad. It was bad. And then when that lull came, although, it's something I'm used to because it happens, it's like, oh my God, what happened? I don't understand this. And so when the first of the year rolled back around, I decided I was not working weekends anymore. And for the most part, I've stuck to that. And we're 6 months into the year, and I've managed to stick to it for the most part. I mean, I've had a couple Saturdays where I've worked 1 or 2 hours out of necessity because, when you work from home, sometimes there's other stuff scheduled and you need to just go do it. But done really good. There's some weekends I don't even turn the computer on, like, at all. I may check Facebook from the computer in the living room or from my phone, but I don't turn my laptop on at all. So, and what we've noticed though is that, well, I'm still tired all the time. I'm a mom, but it's not the same tired of last year. And I look forward to doing things when we plan them. It's no longer an, oh my God, why is there one more thing to do? and it's just been a lot better, and I enjoy my work more too. It's been really good. So if you are feeling burnt out, even if you have a heavy workload, first of all, you need to reassess your workload, start reassessing some deadlines. Get some help if you need it. There are a lot of places where you can find help for your business that's relatively inexpensive. Or, just learn to plan your schedule better during the week so that you can have, it doesn't really matter what day it is, it doesn't even have to be on the weekend. Just make sure that you're scheduling some time to take away from work totally. There are studies out there that show exercise is really, really good for you. Obviously, that reminds me, President Trump thinks that the body is like has a finite amount of energy, and once you're done, you're done. I didn't write it. It was on the news, and yeah, I know. You know, I'm gonna have to get my older son to make me some really good sound bites for some of the impressions that he does. He does a really good fake news impression. But with that being said, when you're an entrepreneur, the thing about exercising, and there have been studies that show this, that downtime for your brain is almost invaluable because, you know, whatever you're doing, exercising, whatever, you're going to increase the oxygen in your bloodstream. It's going to help you think better. Of course, you just end up feeling better after you exercise as long as you don't, hurt yourself. But you learn good technique, you'll be okay. And it's cool because I can't tell you how many times I've been on a treadmill or out walking or something, and maybe I had, something I've just been turning in my mind forever, and all of a sudden it just hits me. And then, I take care of it, or when I start my work day, I just feel so much better. Like, I can't tell you how much better I generally feel. And that level of self care is important. It doesn't, well, I think everyone should have some amount of exercise every day. Make sure you talk to your doctor so that you know what's good for you and what's not. Yet there are other things that you can do. I try to make time every week for Krav Maga. I try to, you wouldn't believe the massive amount of plastic bags that are in my dining room right now for a good purpose. AmericanGoddessSociety.com. I collect plastic bags and I cut them up and I turn them into plarn. And what I'm doing is creating sleeping mats, and they're about 6 foot wide, or I'm sorry, 6 foot long, and about 3.5, 4 foot wide. And we plan on distributing them. Still working on them. It takes a lot of time, not just to crochet the bags because you have to have a really big hook, but it also takes time to prepare the plastic. So, but I try to make time for that because that gives back. And as a pagan, I want to make sure that I'm doing things that honor the deities and give back to the world, because you don't see a lot of that right now in society. And it's a lot of the time it's just not mentioned. I'm not saying that pagans aren't out doing this. I'm just saying we don't see it as much as at least I would like to. I know a lot of my pagan friends that go out and they do things and they volunteer and they do all of these great things, and it's wonderful. So keep up the good work there. But that's one that I try to make time for every week. And then, of course, I have, I just finished a crocheted jacket for my cousin, whose wife is expecting their first girl. And I'm working on a green baby blanket, and I've got a huge 72-inch blanket for my oldest son. It's a ripple, so it takes freaking forever. Of course, this podcast, and I've got 3 websites that I maintain. I cross stitch. I have a lot of different hobbies. I actually just went and fulfilled a life dream yesterday. I was going to say childhood dream, but I don't really remember thinking about this as a child as much as I did as, teenager on up, once I knew that you could do this. I've always loved miniatures. I actually used to have a ton. My grandma would buy them for me when she would go out of town or whatever. She'd always bring me back something. Loved them. Still do. So I went to Hobby Lobby yesterday and bought a dollhouse to put together. It's one of the, not quite as expensive ones. Use that handy little 40% off coupon that they have in their app. And so I'm going to start working on that too. Of course, I have an interesting plan for it that I'm not going to divulge right now. I also have a book that I'm writing. Ooh, and I have one actually that I just released. I wrote it this week. Um, it is on Amazon and it is Self Publishing School. And you can find it. It's got 8 really easy lessons. It's also on sellfi.com/the Robin Bull. But my point is with all this, I'm the type of person I have to stay busy, and staying busy really helps me feel better. It just helps a lot of things for me. And that in turn, because I'm feeling better, I'm more energized and I'm able to take that energy and put it back into my business and that and my family, and it's really really great. So that's pretty much all I had for this show. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can either leave them here on the site, or of course you can find me on Facebook or Twitter. And of course, you know, I'm well, just Google me. I'm pretty easy to find online. So, also make sure if you really love funny stuff, check out confessionsfromthecouch.com. And